The air buzzed with the hum of anticipation as I stepped into the Magnolia Grove Country Club, the heels of my boots clicking against the polished oak floors. My name's Ethan Carver, and tonight was supposed to be my night, my 34th birthday, or so my wife, Lauren, had promised. She'd been relentless about it for weeks, her hazel eyes sparkling as she'd cupped my face and said, "Let me throw you a party, Ethan. You deserve something big." I'd shrugged it off at first. I'm a mechanic, not some high roller, who needs chandeliers and champagne. But she'd insisted. And damn if her smile didn't wear me down. So here I was, tugging at the collar of the black button-up she'd bought me, walking into a room packed with faces I knew from our little town of Magnolia Grove. The place screamed money, crystal lights dripping from the ceiling, waiters in starched shirts weaving through the crowd with trays of bubbling drinks. I'd always felt like an outsider here, a grease-stained nobody in a world Lauren's family owned. Her folks, Harold and Marjorie Tate, ran this town, car dealerships, diners, even the old theater on Pine Street. Lauren was their golden girl, all sharp wit and cascading blonde hair, and I'd been the lucky bastard she'd picked 3 years ago. I'd built a life from nothing, orphaned at 10, scraping by in foster homes, turning wrenches until I owned my garage. She'd said she loved that about me, my fight, my grit. Tonight, I thought, was her proving it. The room was alive, neighbors. I'd grilled burgers with guys from the shop, even old Mrs. Delaney from the corner store, all dressed up and grinning. I waved, my chest swelling a little. Maybe I'd been wrong to doubt Lauren. She'd gone all out. I scanned the crowd. For her, ready to pull her close, whisper a thanks against her ear. But then I saw it. A long table in the center, no cake, no candles, just my beat-up duffel bag, the one I kept in our attic, sitting there like a punchline. Next to it, a stack of papers, crisp and white, glowing under the chandelier light. My gut twisted, a cold, sharp jolt cutting through the warmth I'd felt seconds ago. The chatter died as I stepped closer, every eye in the room pinning me like a spotlight. Lauren emerged from the crowd, her heels clicking, her face a mask, cold, unreadable. Beside her stood a guy I didn't know, tall and slick, his suit screaming. Wall Street, his hand resting on her arm like he belonged there. Harold loomed behind them, his silver hair glinting, his jaw set like granite, and Marjorie clutched her pearls, her lips a thin, judgmental line. "Happy birthday, Ethan," Lauren said, her voice flat as asphalt. Or maybe I should say farewell. My heart slammed against my ribs, a freight train of confusion and rage roaring through me. Farewell? What the hell was this? I took a step toward the table, my hands curling into fists. The duffel, my duffel, was packed, zippers straining, my life stuffed inside like trash. The papers, divorce forms, my name scrawled in her neat handwriting, and something else, financial sheets with my signature forged on deals I'd never seen. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling like wildfire. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, my voice low, shaking, loud enough to cut through the silence. Lauren crossed her arms, her eyes glinting like steel. "It's time to go, Ethan. You're done here." "Done?" After 3 years of pouring my soul into our marriage, fixing her car late at night, laughing over cheap beer on our porch, after turning down a gig in Nashville because she wanted to stay near her precious Tates, my face burned, the humiliation sinking in. They'd planned this, all of them turned my birthday into a goddamn execution. Harold stepped up, his voice booming. "You've overstayed, Carver. Take your bag and get out." The slick guy smirked and I saw red, pure blazing red. This wasn't a party. It was a setup, a public gutting, and they thought I'd just slink away. I locked eyes with Lauren, searching for the woman I'd loved, but she was gone. Replaced by this stranger who'd orchestrated my ruin. "A farewell party, huh?" I said, my voice rising, cracking with fury. "Well, let's see how this plays out." My hand brushed my pocket, the weight of my phone a lifeline. They thought they'd cornered me, thought I'd break. But I'd survived worse than this. Foster homes, hunger, nights with no roof. And I wasn't about to let the Tates bury me. Not tonight. Not ever. The chandelier light burned my eyes as I stood frozen in the Magnolia Grove Country Club, the weight of Lauren's words, "You're done here," crashing into me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My name's Ethan Carver, and in that moment, my world didn't just crack. It shattered, jagged pieces slicing through every hope I'd clung to for 3 years. The crowd's whispers buzzed like hornets, their stares drilling into me, but I couldn't tear my eyes off her. Lauren stood there, tall and untouchable, her blonde hair catching the glow like a halo she didn't deserve. Beside her, that slick stranger, his hand still on her arm, watched me with a smirk that made my blood boil. Behind them, Harold and Marjorie Tate flanked her like sentinels, their faces carved from stone, radiating a cold triumph that told me this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment betrayal. This was a goddamn ambush. My duffel bag sat on the table, a battered relic of my life, stuffed full and mocking me. Next to it, the papers, divorce forms, financial sheets with my name tied to things I'd never touched, screamed setup. I took a step closer, my boots thudding against the floor, my breath ragged. "What is this, Lauren?" I demanded, my voice a raw scrape, loud enough to ripple through the silence. She didn't flinch, just tilted her head, her hazel eyes glinting with something cruel. "It's over, Ethan," she said, crisp and final, like she was firing a hired hand. "You don't belong here anymore." The words hit like a punch, but it was the guy next to her that lit the fuse, his hand sliding to her waist, possessive, like I'd already been erased. "Who the hell is he?" I snarled, my fists clenching so tight my knuckles cracked. The stranger straightened, his smirk widening, his suit pristine against my worn jacket. "Name's Derek," he said, voice smooth as oil, "and I'm what comes next." My vision tunneled, rage roaring through me like a V8 engine at full throttle. Next, after I'd spent nights fixing her car, days building a home, years loving her. Harold stepped forward, his silver hair gleaming, his voice a low growl. "You've had your run, Carver. Time to clear out before you embarrass yourself further." Embarrass myself? They'd turned my birthday into a circus, and he had the gall to stand there like I was the fool. Marjorie's lips curled into a sneer, her pearls glinting as she spoke. "We gave you a chance, Ethan. You should have known your place." My place? I'd clawed my way out of nothing. Orphanages, cold nights, busted knuckles, to build something real, and they thought they could just toss me aside. The crowd shifted, some looking away, others leaning in, hungry for the drama. I saw Tom from the diner, his eyes wide, Sarah from the gas station, her hand over her mouth. These were my people, my town, and the Tates were ripping it out from under me. I locked eyes with Lauren again, searching for a crack, a flicker of the woman who'd laughed with me over late-night coffee, who'd kissed me under the oak in our yard. But she was gone, replaced by this ice queen who'd orchestrated my public execution. "You planned this," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "All of you. The party, the papers, him." Derek chuckled, a low, mocking sound, and I nearly lunged. Only the weight of 100 eyes held me back. Harold crossed his arms, his jaw tight. "You're a liability, Ethan. Always were. We're cleaning house." Cleaning house. Like I was dirt they could sweep out. My mind raced, piecing it together. The late nights Lauren claimed were family business. The way Harold had started avoiding me. Marjorie's cold stares at Sunday dinners. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a purge. They'd forged my name, pinned their schemes on me, and now they were cutting me loose with a smile. "You think I'll just walk away?" I said, stepping closer, my voice rising, cracking the air. "After everything I gave you? My trust, my life?" Lauren's mask slipped for a split second. Something flashed in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. But it vanished fast. "You gave what we let you give," she said, her tone venomous. "Now take your bag and go." The room spun, my chest heaving, every muscle coiled like a spring. Derek leaned in, whispering something in her ear, and she nodded, a queen and her knight dismissing the peasant. Harold barked, "Enough, Carver! Get out, or we'll make you!" The threat hung heavy, but it was the suitcase that broke me. The sight of my life, packed up and discarded in front of everyone I knew. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at Lauren, the woman I'd loved, now a stranger wielding a knife. "You'll regret this," I said, my voice low, a promise wrapped in rage. My hand brushed my phone again, a spark igniting in the dark. They thought they'd won, thought they'd crushed me. But I'd survived worse than the Tates, and I'd be damned if I let them bury me without a fight. The Magnolia Grove Country Club felt like a tomb as I stood there, the sting of Lauren's "you're done here" still echoing in my skull, her cold eyes and Derek's smirk branding my soul with betrayal. My name's Ethan Carver, and in that moment, with my duffel bag and forged papers staring me down, my mind didn't stay in the present. It raced back, clawing through the last 6 months, ripping open memories I'd buried under blind trust. Every late night, every excuse, every glance I'd shrugged off. They weren't just cracks in our marriage. They were warning flares I'd been too damn stubborn to see. I'd built my life on grit, on fixing what's broken. Cars, dreams, myself, but I couldn't fix this, because I'd missed the signs until they'd blown up in my face. It started small, subtle as a shadow creeping across the garage floor. Lauren began coming home late, 9, 10, sometimes midnight, her blonde hair mussed, her hazel eyes dodging mine when I'd ask, "Rough day?" She'd wave me off, her voice sharp, "Just Tate business, Ethan, you wouldn't get it." I'd nod, pour her a beer, let it slide. I wasn't the prying type, grew up with nothing, learned to keep my head down and work, but her dismissals piled up like rust on a junked engine. Then she stopped eating dinner with me. "I grabbed something with Mom," she'd say, breezing past the kitchen where I'd cooked her favorite. Chicken fried steak, gravy, thick as my hope. I'd sit alone at our scarred oak table, the silence heavier than the wrench in my hand, telling myself she was just busy, that the Tates always demanded more. The bedroom was next. 4 months back, she started sleeping in the guest room down the hall. "You snore too loud," she'd snapped one night, yanking her pillow away, leaving me staring at the empty dent in our bed. I'd lie awake after that, ears straining through the dark, catching whispers, soft, secretive, her voice slipping through the walls like a ghost. Phone calls at 2 a.m., laughter that didn't belong to me. "Who's that?" I'd asked once, leaning in the doorway, my heart thudding. She'd flinched, clutched her phone, snapped, "Nobody, Ethan, go back to bed." I did, swallowing the ache, convincing myself it was family stuff, Harold's dealership deals, Marjorie's charity galas. I'd trusted her, loved her, built a damn life with her. How could I not? But the signs kept coming, sharper, louder, like a car engine screaming before it blows. She stopped touching me. No more brushing my arm when I fixed her coffee. No more curling into me on the couch during thunderstorms. Her excuses got flimsier. Meetings that didn't match the calendar. Girls' nights when I'd see her. Car parked at Harold's office, lights off. I'd drive by sometimes late after closing the garage, my truck's headlights cutting through the fog, my gut twisting as I saw her silhouette with someone. Tall, broad, not me. I'd shake it. Off, crank the radio, tell myself I was paranoid. Me, paranoid. I'd survived foster homes, fists, hunger. I didn't scare easy. But this gnawed at me. A slow bleed I couldn't patch. Harold and Marjorie shifted too. Harold stopped clapping my shoulder at barbecues, his grey eyes sliding past me like I was a ghost. Marjorie quit asking me to fix her Cadillac, her, smiles turning to thin, tight lines, like I'd overstayed my welcome in their perfect Tate world. Sunday dinners became a battlefield, Lauren whispering with her mum, Harold barking orders at staff, me sitting there with a plate of cold roast. Feeling the walls close in. "You okay, man?" Tom asked once, catching me outside, his diner apron still on. I'd nodded, forced a grin, said, "Yeah, just tired." Tired. What a lie. I was drowning, and I didn't even know it. Back in the club, those months slammed into me like a wrecking ball, every ignored sign a brick in the wall they'd built to trap me. Lauren's late nights weren't work. They were her and Derek, plotting, laughing, turning me into a pawn. Harold's distance, Marjorie's disdain, it wasn't just family quirks. It was their disgust for the grease-stained nobody who dared marry their princess. They'd played me, all of them, and I'd let them because I'd wanted to believe in us, me and Lauren against the world. "You're a fool, Ethan," I muttered under my breath, the words bitter as motor oil, my hands shaking as I faced her across that table. Her voice cut through my haze, icy and smug. "You should have seen it coming." Derek chuckled, Harold nodded, and the crowd's murmurs swelled, a tidal wave of pity and shock. Seen it coming? Maybe I should have... The whispers, the cold bed, the forged papers now staring me down, but I'd loved her too hard to look. Now with my life packed in that damn duffel, the truth hit like a freight train. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a war they'd waged behind my back, and I'd been too blind, too loyal to fight. My chest burned, my fists clenched, and I swore right there under those chandeliers that blindness ended tonight. The Magnolia Grove Country Club was a pressure cooker, the air thick with tension as Lauren's "You're done here" hung like a noose around my neck, Derek's smirk, and the Tate's cold stares tightening it with every heartbeat. My name's Ethan Carver, and standing there, my duffel bag and forged papers, mocking me from that table. I wasn't just fighting the betrayal, I was waking up to the war I'd already been losing, the signs I'd ignored for months, her late nights, the whispers, the distance, weren't just cracks, they were battle lines, and I'd been too damn blind to arm myself. But that blindness had ended weeks ago, back when the doubts turned to dread, and I stopped being the trusting fool they'd banked on. I'd started digging, collecting, building a shield they didn't know I had. And now, with their smug faces, staring me down, that shield was about to become a weapon. It kicked off 3 months back, right after Lauren moved to the guest room, her "you snore" excuse ringing hollow as those late-night whispers drifted through the walls. I'd lie, there, fists clenched, the hum of my own pulse drowning out sleep until one night I couldn't take it anymore. I'm a mechanic, fixing things is my blood. So I fixed this the only way I knew how. I got smart. No yelling, no begging, just quiet, cold resolve. I'd grown up with nothing, dodged fists in foster homes, learned to read a room before it. Turned ugly. Lauren thought I was just a wrench turner, too simple to suspect her, but she didn't know me, not really. I'd survived by being sharp, and now I turned that sharpness on her. First came the recorder. I snagged a cheap one online, small, black, easy to hide, feeling like a traitor as I slipped it under the guest room dresser one afternoon while she was out. My hands shook, guilt gnawing at me, but the ache in my chest screamed louder. I had to know. That night I listened, earbuds jammed in, my truck parked a mile from home so she wouldn't hear. Her voice crackled through, soft, flirty, giggling with someone. "Ethan's clueless," she said, the words a knife in my gut. "He'll never figure it out." Then a man's voice, Derek's I'd later learn, smooth and smug. "Good. Keep him that way till we're set." My breath hitched, my fingers digging into the steering wheel. Clueless? I'd rebuilt engines from scrap, taught myself wiring in a shed with no lights. They thought I was dumb. Next, I went deeper. Lauren locked her phone now, but I'd seen her type the passcode once. Our anniversary, 0519, back when I thought it meant something. One morning while she showered, I grabbed it from the kitchen counter, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. Emails spilled out, her and Derek, flirty at first, then dark. "Move the funds through Ethan's shop account," one read, signed by Harold. "He's the perfect front," another from Derek. "Meet me at the motel Friday, Ethan's working late." My stomach churned, bile rising, but I snapped photos with my phone. Every word fuel for the fire growing in me. They weren't just cheating. They were framing me, using my garage as a laundering hub for Tate schemes. I didn't stop there. Harold's dealership was next. I'd fixed his books once, knew their system. Late one night I drove to the lot, parked in the shadows, and used an old laptop to crack their Wi-Fi. Skills I'd picked up from a foster brother who'd hacked arcade machines for quarters. Invoices flooded the screen. Fake parts orders, cash funneled through my name, signed with a forgery so good it'd fool a bank. My hands trembled as I saved it all to a flash drive, the glow of the screen lighting my rage. Then I hit Marjorie's charity. A quick search on their public site showed donations vanishing into accounts tied to my social security number. They weren't just dumping me, they were burying me under their crimes. Back in the club, those weeks of digging slammed into focus, my hand brushing the phone in my pocket, loaded with recordings, screenshots, proof. Lauren's voice from that night, "Ethan's clueless," rang in my ears, but I wasn't anymore. I'd caught her laughing with Derek, Harold plotting with his cigar-stubbed growl, Marjorie cooing about cleaning up loose ends. I'd hoarded it all, a stockpile of their sins, waiting for the moment to strike. You should have seen it coming, Lauren taunted, her tone dripping venom, and the crowd leaned in, hungry for my collapse. Derek adjusted his tie. Harold snorted. Marjorie clutched her pearls. They thought they'd won, thought I'd slink off with my tail between my legs. But I'd been a fighter since I was 10, scrapping for every scrap. And this was my scrapyard now. Seen it coming? I said, my voice low, steady, cutting through their smugness. Oh, I saw it, Lauren. I saw it all. My fingers tightened on the phone, my pulse a war drum. They didn't know what I'd built in the shadows. Every whisper, every lie, every forged signature locked and loaded. They'd turned my life into a game, but I'd flipped the board and the pieces were about to crash down on them, not me. The Magnolia Grove Country Club crackled with tension, the chandelier light glinting off Lauren's icy stare as her words, "You're done here," sank into me like a blade. My name's Ethan Carver, and right then, with my duffel bag and forged papers glaring from that damn table, I wasn't just a man betrayed, I was a fuse lit, burning hot and fast, ready to blow this whole charade sky high. Months of ignored signs, weeks of secret recordings, every whisper and lie I'd caught, they'd all led to this, the moment the Tates thought they'd bury me. But I'd been scrapping since I was a kid, turning junk into gold, and I'd be damned if I let them turn me into their trash. My hand gripped the phone in my pocket, loaded with proof, my ace in the hole, and as Derek smirked, Harold growled, and Marjorie sneered, I decided this wasn't their party anymore. It was mine. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a hungry buzz, feeding off the drama, but I tuned it out, locking eyes with Lauren. You think you've won, I said, my voice low, steady, slicing through the air like a wrench on steel. How you think you can parade this bastard? I jerked my head at Derek, and kick me out like some stray dog. Her lips twitched, a flicker of unease, but she held her ground, arms crossed, queen of her twisted court. Derek stepped closer, his suit gleaming, his voice a taunt. Face it, Carver, you're outclassed. Take your bag and crawl back to your grease pit. My blood roared, a V8 at redline, but I didn't swing. Not yet. I had something better. Outclassed, I said, my laugh sharp, bitter, echoing off the polished walls. Let's see how classy you look when the truth hits. My hand slid from my pocket, phone raised high, thumb hovering over the screen. The crowd leaned in, breath held as I tapped once. The club's giant projector screen, usually flashing golf scores or wedding toasts, flickered to life, and there it was, Lauren's voice, crystal clear, spilling from the speakers. Ethan's working late tonight, she purred, flirty. Recorded from that guest room weeks ago. We've got the house to ourselves, Derek. Gasps ripped through the room, sharp and jagged, as heads whipped toward her. Derek's smirk vanished, his face paling like he'd seen a ghost. I tapped again and Harold's growl filled the air, caught on my recorder from a dealership backroom chat. Carver's name's on the loans. Dummy account. If it crashes, he takes the fall. The crowd erupted. Shouts, whispers, phones yanked out to film. Marjorie clutched her pearls, her sneer melting into panic, while Harold lunged forward, his face red as a busted gasket. Turn that off, you son of a bitch, he bellowed, but I held my ground, tapping once more. Another clip, Lauren and Derek laughing, her voice cold. He's so damn trusting, it's almost sad. Sad? I'd trusted her with my life, and she'd sold me out for this slick punk. You planned this, I said, my voice rising, raw with fury, pointing at the table, my duffel, the papers. A fake party to dump me, frame me, wash your hands clean, but I've got it all, every word, every deal, every lie. The screen looped, their voices a damning chorus, and the room spun into chaos. Tom from the diner shouted, "What the hell, Lauren?" Sarah from the gas station filmed, her jaw dropped. These were my people, and they were waking up. Lauren's mask cracked, her eyes darting, but she spat. "You've got nothing, Ethan, this proves nothing." Her voice shook, though, fear creeping in. Then the doors banged open, cutting through the noise like a gunshot. In strode Rachel Vance, my lawyer, my knockout punch. 5'2", sharp as a tack, her dark hair pulled tight, a briefcase swinging in her hand. The crowd parted as she marched to my side, heels clicking like a war drum, her voice cool and lethal. "Oh, it proves plenty, Mrs. Tate," she said, slamming the briefcase on the table, papers spilling out, court orders, subpoenas, my evidence printed and stamped. "Ethan's not going anywhere. You are." She glared at Harold. "Asset. Freeze effective now. Investigation's already rolling." The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, flashes from phones lighting up the chaos. Harold roared, "This is bullshit. You can't—" But Rachel cut him off, holding up a subpoena. "Tell it to the judge, Mr. Tate. You're done barking orders." Derek backed off, his swagger gone, while Marjorie whimpered, pearls forgotten. Lauren lunged at me, her nails flashing. "You think you're smart?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. I sidestepped, calm as steel. "No," I said, meeting her glare. "Just prepared." The screen blared on. 500 viewers online now, climbing fast. Magnolia Grove's dirty laundry airing live for the world. I turned to the crowd, my voice steady, carrying over the storm. "They wanted a show. Let's give 'em one they'll never forget." Rachel nodded, her grin fierce, and I felt it. A shift, a tide turning. They'd thrown me a fake party to break me, but I'd turned it into their reckoning. The Tates thought they'd bury me under their lies, but I'd dug my way out, and now they were the ones sinking. The Magnolia Grove Country Club was a battlefield in ruins as the projector screen flickered off. Lauren's damning laughter and Harold's gruff confessions fading into a stunned silence that didn't last. "My name's Ethan Carver," and in that moment, with my duffel bag still slumped on the table, I wasn't just the guy they'd tried to bury. I was the one holding the shovel, watching the Tates' empire crack under the weight of their own lies. The crowd buzzed like a kicked hive, phones flashing, voices shouting, while Rachel Vance, my lawyer, stood beside me, her briefcase open, court orders fanned out like a winning hand. I'd turned their fake party into a public execution, and now the law was stepping in to finish the job. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, raw and unrelenting, and I'd fought tooth and nail to see it through. Lauren's face was a mask of shock, her hazel eyes wide, her blonde hair falling loose as she stumbled back, clutching the table's edge. Derek, the slick bastard, had slunk to the corner, his swagger gone, his suit wrinkled like his spine. Harold roared, his silver hair wild, his fist slamming the table. "You'll pay for this, Carver," he bellowed, but his voice cracked, hollowed out by the chaos I'd unleashed. Marjorie whimpered, her pearls dangling loose, her hands trembling as she tried to pull Lauren away. The crowd didn't let up. Tom from the diner yelled, "You!" framed him. Sarah from the gas station snapped photos, her voice sharp. "They're done. Done." That word hit me hard, a hammer on steel, because they weren't just losing a fight, they were losing everything. Rachel stepped forward, her voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "Mr. Tate, your assets are frozen. Bank accounts, dealerships, properties, state investigators are on their way." She held up a court order, her dark eyes glinting. "And this? This grants Ethan immediate control of his marital assets, plus 30% of Tate Enterprises per spousal transfer laws." The room gasped, a tidal wave of shock crashing over the Tates. Harold lunged at her, his face purple. "That's my company, you bitch." Rachel didn't flinch, just slid another paper across the table. My divorce terms, signed in my scrawl, not theirs. "Not anymore," she said, cool as ice. "Ethan's name was on your scams. Now it's on your empire." I grabbed the pen from Rachel's hand, my fingers steady despite the fire in my chest, and signed the divorce papers right. There, my terms locked in, our house, my garage, no dime for Lauren. "You wanted me out," I said, my voice low, carrying over the din, staring her down. "Now you're out." Her lips trembled, her mask shattering, but before she could speak, the doors swung open again. 2 cops strode in, badges gleaming, boots thudding on the oak floor. "Harold Tate," one barked. "You're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement. Let's go." The crowd parted, phones up filming as Harold froze, his bluster gone, his shoulders slumping like a busted axle. Marjorie shrieked, "This is outrageous!" But the cops didn't blink, cuffing him as she collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Lauren lunged at me, her nails clawing the air. "You can't do this, Ethan," she screamed, her voice raw, cracking with desperation. I stepped back, calm, unyielding. "You did this," I said, pointing at the screen. now dark but still echoing her betrayal in my head. You laughed. You lied, you framed me, live with it. Derek muttered something, edging toward the exit, but a cop blocked him. Stay put, Mr. Powell, you're next. His face drained, and I almost smiled. Almost. The room was a circus now, reporters shoving through the doors, flashes popping like gunfire. The live stream hitting 1,000 viewers, then 2,000, the Tate's downfall going viral. Rachel tapped my shoulder, her grin fierce. You've got the house 30% of their company, and they've got nothing but handcuffs and headlines. I nodded, feeling the weight shift. Not just the legal win, but the power I'd taken back. The house was mine. Every board I'd nailed, every wall I'd painted. Hers no more. Tate Enterprises, the empire they'd built on my back, now bled into my hands. Harold stumbled as the cops hauled him out, Marjorie trailing, her sobs a pathetic soundtrack. Lauren stood alone, the crowd circling her like vultures, her reign as Magnolia Grove's princess over. I turned to the room, my voice steady, loud, enough to silence the chaos. They threw me a party to break me. I turned it into their end. Anyone else want to try? The challenge hung heavy and final, met with cheers from Tom, Sarah, half the town I'd lived with for years. The Tates had ruled Magnolia Grove with an iron fist, but that fist was broken now, and I'd swung the hammer. Rachel packed her briefcase, her voice low, just for me. This is just the start, Ethan. They're done, and you're not. I looked at my duffel, still there, a relic of their plan, and kicked it aside. I wasn't leaving. They were. The dust hadn't settled in Magnolia Grove when I walked out of that country club. The echo of handcuffs on Harold's wrists and Lauren's broken screams still ringing in my ears. My name's Ethan Carver, and that night, with the Tates, empire crumbling behind me, I wasn't just a survivor. I was a man reborn, forged in the fire they'd lit to burn me down. The house I'd won, our house once, was mine now, every nail and shingle a testament to the life I'd built. But it wasn't home anymore. Too many ghosts lingered in the halls. Lauren's laugh over morning coffee, her silhouette in the bedroom window, all tainted by lies. I couldn't stay there, not with the stench of betrayal baked into the walls. So I left, not running, but stepping forward, my boots crunching gravel as I drove my truck to a new start, a blank slate I'd carved with my own hands. I found it on the edge of town, a small weathered house, paint peeling like an old scar, the yard a tangle of weeds and wild hope. Cash from my garage bought it outright. No loans, no strings, just mine, the way I'd always wanted before. The Tates sank their claws into me. The keys jangled in my hand as I stood in the driveway, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the cracked porch. This wasn't their Magnolia Grove anymore, with its polished facades and whispered power plays. This was my ground, raw and real, a place to strip away the man I'd been, the trusting fool who'd let Lauren blind him, and build something stronger. I hefted a box of tools from the truck, the weight familiar, grounding, a promise to myself. No more ghosts, no more chains. The first week was chaos, unpacking, patching leaks, wrestling an ancient mower through the jungle of a yard. My hands bled, my back ached, but every splinter and sweat drop felt like freedom. The garage picked up too. Old clients trickled back, new ones called, drawn by the headlines. Local mechanic topples Tate dynasty. They'd slap my shoulder, grinning. You're a legend, Ethan. And I'd shrug, wiping oil from my hands. But inside, it stirred something. I wasn't just fixing cars now. I was fixing me, piece by piece, engine by engine. The house started to shape up. New paint on the walls, a porch chair I'd bolted together from scrap. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, like the life I was. Clawing back. Rachel rolled up one evening, her sedan crunching the fresh gravel, a bottle of whiskey in hand. Housewarming, she said, smirking, stepping onto the porch as the sun bled orange across the sky. We sat, the wood creaking under us, glasses clinking as she poured. Town's still buzzing, she said, sipping slow. Harold's indicted. Marjorie's scrambling. Lauren's gone quiet. You shook Magnolia Grove to its roots. I nodded, staring at the horizon, the whiskey warm in my throat. Good, I said, my voice rough. Let it shake. She grinned, fierce as ever. "You're not the guy I met 3 months ago, Ethan. That guy was half buried. This one, he's standing tall." She was right. The Ethan who'd walked into that fake party was gone, naive, hopeful, blind. I'd been a kid who'd fought through foster homes, a man who'd built a business from nothing. But I'd let Lauren and the Tates soften me, dull my edges with promises of love and family. That softness had cost me, nights staring at an empty bed, days swallowing her excuses. But it was dead now, burned out in the club's chaos. This Ethan was sharper, harder, forged in betrayal's furnace. I didn't need their approval, their world. I had my hands, my tools, my will, same as always. But now they answered only to me. The house wasn't just a roof. It was a line, in the sand. I sold the old place quick, let some young couple take it, their laughter echoing as they signed the papers. I didn't look back, couldn't. Every memory there was a lie, a prop in Lauren's game, and I was done playing. The new place smelled of sawdust and paint, not her perfume, and when I slept it was deep, dreamless, the weight of her gone. Work kept me steady, clients piling in, my name spreading beyond Magnolia Grove. "Heard you took down the Tates," a guy said one day, dropping off a busted Chevy. "That true?" I nodded, tightening a bolt. "Yeah, they started it, I finished it." Nights alone on the porch became my ritual, the crickets humming as I watched the stars, the whiskey bottle dwindling. I thought about Lauren sometimes, her face in the club pale and cracked, her voice begging in my head. But it didn't hurt anymore. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I wasn't the broken man she'd counted on, the one she'd mocked as clueless. I was Ethan Carver, rebuilt, redefined, not by her, not by them, but by me. The town could whisper, the Tates could rot. I had my ground, my life, and no one was taking it again. The air in Magnolia Grove carried a new bite as I stood on my porch, the weathered boards creaking under my boots, the stars above sharp against the night. My name's Ethan Carver, and weeks after I'd torched the Tates' fake party and watched their empire buckle, I wasn't just a man standing tall. I was a spark that wouldn't die, igniting something bigger than myself. The town was shifting, the shadow of Harold and Marjorie's iron grip fading, and in its place whispers turned to voices, loud, angry, ready. They'd crushed people here for years, squeezed them dry under polished smiles, and I'd cracked that facade wide open. But winning in that club wasn't enough. I'd torn down their throne, and now I'd build something from the ashes, not just for me, but for every soul they'd stepped on. It started with a late-night thought, the whiskey warm in my glass. As crickets hummed. I'd beaten the Tates with proof, recordings, emails, grit, but how many others had proof too, buried under fear or despair? Magnolia Grove wasn't just my battleground, it was theirs too. Shop owners, workers, families the Tates had bled for profit. I called Rachel the next morning, my voice rough from lack of sleep. "What if we made a way for them?" I said. "Pacing the porch. A place to fight back, share what they've got, get help." She didn't hesitate, her tone sharp over the line. "A platform? Hell yes, Ethan. Let's do it." That was it. The match struck, the fire catching. And we didn't waste a damn second. I built it myself, called it Break the Chains. A simple site, rugged as my garage, coded on my old laptop between oil changes. A space for the broken to upload their stories, their evidence, photos, contracts, whatever they'd clutched in the dark. Rachel lined up the muscle, pro bono, lawyers, an ex-cop investigator, a bookkeeper Harold had fired years back. We launched it fast a week later, my face on the first post staring into the webcam from my living room. "The Tates used me," I said, my voice steady, raw. "They'll use you too unless we stop them. If they've hurt you, you're not alone. Bring what you've got, we'll fight together." I hit upload, my pulse hammering, and waited. It blew up, dozens of hits in hours, then hundreds. First came Jenny, who ran the florist on Main. Her voice shook in a video, showing a lease Harold had jacked up till she'd nearly lost everything. "They threatened to evict me," she said, tears streaking her face. "I've got the letters." Then Mike, a mechanic I'd trained, uploaded pay stubs, years of wages skimmed by Tate Enterprises. "They said take it or leave," he growled, holding up the proof. Stories poured in. Farmers with forged land deals, a teacher whose pension vanished into Marjorie's charity. My screen glowed late into the night, their words a gut punch, their trust a weight I hadn't expected but wouldn't drop. We didn't stop there. Rachel pushed harder, her legal mind a blade carving through the wreckage. "We've got enough for a class action," she said one afternoon, papers spread across my kitchen table, her coffee cold. "These people, they're ready to sue." I nodded, feeling the tide rise. She filed it that week, naming me lead plaintiff, not just my fight now, but ours. The Tate's old estate, seized in the audits, became our base. I turned a chunk into a community hub. Single mums got job training there. Kids ran through with backpacks from a drive we ran. Small businesses got loans from a fund we scraped. Together. I'd walk through some days, boots echoing on the hardwood, seeing life bloom where the Tates had sown ruin. Magnolia Grove changed fast. Main Street hummed. Shops the Tates had choked started breathing again, their signs bright, their doors open. People nodded at me now, not out of pity, but respect. Tom from the diner slipping me free coffee, Sarah from the gas station waving as I drove by. "You gave us a shot, Ethan," Jenny said one morning, handing me a sunflower from her shop, her smile real for the first time in years. I took it, my throat tight, and muttered, "You gave yourselves the shot, I just opened the door." But it stuck. The town saw me as the guy who'd lit the fuse, and they were the explosion, tearing down decades of Tate control. The platform grew, hundreds of users, stories spilling beyond Magnolia Grove, calls from other towns begging to join. Rachel grinned over whiskey one night, her eyes gleaming. "We're not just breaking their chains here, Ethan. This could go national." I leaned back, the porch creaking, the weight of it sinking in. Not just a win, but a wave. The Tates were done. Harold in cuffs, Marjorie a ghost, Lauren a whisper. But this wasn't about them anymore. It was about Jenny, Mike, the kids. In that hub, the town I'd called home. I'd walked into that party a mark, I'd walked out a match. Now I was fuel, and Magnolia Grove was burning bright, not with rage but with hope. The morning sun burned through the haze over Magnolia Grove, casting gold across my porch as I leaned against the railing, coffee steaming in my hand. My name's Ethan Carver, and months after I'd turned the Tates' fake party into their funeral pyre, the town wasn't just healing, it was roaring back to life, and somehow I'd become its beating heart. The air felt different now, lighter, freer, without Harold's shadow looming over Main Street or Marjorie's whispers twisting deals in back rooms. Break the Chains had spread like wildfire, its stories fueling a reckoning that didn't stop at the Tates' doorstep, and Magnolia Grove was standing taller because of it. But what hit me hardest wasn't the lawsuits or the headlines. It was the way people looked at me now, not as the grease-stained mechanic they'd pitied, but as the man who'd handed them a torch to burn down decades of quiet tyranny. It crept up slow at first, like oil seeping through an engine block. I'd walk into Tom's diner for a burger, and heads would turn, not with whispers of "poor Ethan" like after the club, but with nods, quick smiles, a murmured, "Hey man," from guys I'd barely known. Tom started slipping me coffee on the house, his grizzled grin wide as he'd say, "Can't charge a damn hero, Carver." I'd laugh it off, mutter, "Just doing what I had to." But he'd shake his head, pointing at the packed booths. "This place was half dead till you kicked the hornet's nest. Now look at it." He was right. Main Street buzzed, shops full, laughter spilling from doorways the Tates had once choked silent. Then came the kids. One Saturday I was under a Chevy at the garage, wrench in hand, when a pack of them rolled up on bikes, scrawny, loud, eyes bright. "Mr. Carver," one yelled, a girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. "My dad says you're why he's still got his farm." They thrust a crumpled drawing at me in a cape, fists raised, a cartoon Tate crumbling. Behind, I froze, oil dripping on my boots, my throat tight. Thanks," I managed, taking it, their cheers ringing as they pedaled off. Later, I tacked it to the garage wall next to my tools. Silly, sure, but it stuck there, a jagged little piece of something I hadn't expected. Pride not just mine, but theirs. The real kicker hit a month later, on a crisp fall day. I was hauling scrap from the hub, the old Tate estate, now ours, when Sarah from the gas station flagged me down, her pickup idling. "Town hall's tonight," she said, leaning out the window. "They're talking about you, better show." I shrugged, figuring it was some zoning gripe, but when I walked into that packed hall, the air shifted, electric, heavy. Every seat was full. Jenny from the florist, Mike the mechanic, families I'd seen on Break the Chains, and they clapped when I stepped in, a wave of sound that hit me like a freight train. I stopped, boots rooted, my chest tight. "Mayor," Dawson took the podium, his voice booming over the crowd. "Ethan Carver didn't just fight for himself, he fought for us. He took down the Tates, gave us a voice, turned this town around." Cheers erupted, fists pounding tables, and I stood there, hands shoved in my pockets, feeling every eye on me. Dawson raised a hand, quieting them. "We're naming the hub after him, Carver Community Center, a place for us because of him." The room exploded again, whistles, stomps, kids waving signs with my name scrawled in marker. I blinked hard, the edges of my vision blurring, and muttered to Rachel beside me, "This is nuts." She smirked, elbowing me. "Get used to it." Legend. They dragged me up front. Tom, Sarah, Jenny, half the damn town, slapping my back, shaking my hand till it ached. "You saved my shop," Jenny said, her eyes wet. "My kids eat because of you," a single mom whispered, gripping my arm. Mike grinned, punching my shoulder. "Told you you're a badass." I tried to wave it off, I just wanted 'em gone, but they wouldn't let me. The applause kept coming, a tide I couldn't stop, and for once I didn't want to. I'd walked into Magnolia Grove an outsider, a foster kid with busted knuckles, a mechanic with no roots. And now they claimed me, not with pity, but with something fierce, something real. That night, driving home, the Carver Community Center sign glowed fresh in my headlights. Simple, bold, mine. I pulled over, staring at it, the weight settling deep. I hadn't asked for this, didn't want a cape, a title, just a quiet life, a fair shot. But I'd lit a match, and they'd turned it into a bonfire, not to destroy, but to warm, to build. The Tates had ruled with fear. I'd fought with truth, and Magnolia Grove chose me for it. I wasn't their hero. I was their proof they could stand too. And as the crickets sang, I let it sink in. I'd come to bury my past. But I'd planted a future instead. The night hung quiet over Magnolia Grove, the stars piercing the dark as I sat on my porch, the wood groaning softly under my weight, a half-empty whiskey bottle glinting in the moonlight. My name's Ethan Carver, and a year after I'd walked into that fake birthday party, duffel bag packed, betrayal sharp as a blade, I wasn't the man they'd tried to break anymore. The Tates were gone, Harold rotting in a cell, Marjorie a shadow selling off scraps, Lauren vanished like smoke, and Magnolia Grove wasn't their playground now. It was mine, ours, rebuilt from the wreckage they'd left. Break the Chains hummed strong. The Carver Community Center stood proud, and me. I'd found something I hadn't chased. Peace, purpose, a life carved by my own hands, not theirs. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning, hard-won and unbreakable. The house felt like mine now, every creak and crack a mark of the months I'd poured into it. New wiring I'd run myself, walls I'd painted till my arms burned, a porch I'd rebuilt plank by plank. No echoes of Lauren lingered here, no ghosts of her laughter or lies, just the hum of crickets and the scent of fresh-cut grass. I'd wake to the sun spilling through the windows, not dread, brew coffee in a kitchen I'd gutted and remade, step outside to a yard that wasn't a battlefield. The garage thrived, cars lined up, my name on every tongue from here to the county line, and Break the Chains had grown beyond my wildest bets. Thousands of users now, stories pouring in from states I'd never seen, each one a brick. In the wall we'd raised against bastards like the Tates. Rachel swung by one evening, her sedan kicking up dust, a stack of papers under her arm instead of whiskey this time. "So you've got a monster on your hands," she said, dropping into the chair beside me, her grin sharp. "Platforms hitting national news. CNN wants an interview. You're not just a local hero anymore, Ethan." I leaned back, the porch creaking, sipping slow. "Didn't sign up for that," I said, my voice rough, but she laughed, shoving a headline at me. Mechanics fight topples titans, sparks movement. I scanned it, my face, my story, Magnolia Grove's comeback, and felt the weight. Settle, not heavy but solid. They're calling it the Carver effect, she added, eyes gleaming. Towns everywhere want in. I didn't say much, just nodded, staring at the stars, but inside it churned. A year ago I'd been a mark, a pawn they'd laughed at, clueless in Lauren's smug purr. Now, I was a name, a force, not because I'd wanted fame, but because I'd refused to bend. The center buzzed daily, kids laughing, classes running, folks finding their feet, and every time I walked through, someone would stop me. "Thanks, Ethan," or "You changed everything." Jenny's flower shop bloomed on Main. Mike's wages were his again. Tom's diner packed till closing. I hadn't just survived, I'd sparked a fire that warmed them too, and that hit deeper than any win in that club. The Tate's end came quiet, final. Word trickled in. Harold's appeal failed. His sentence stretched to 10 years. Marjorie sold the last of their estate, a shell of her pearl-clutching self. Derek took a plea, slinking off to nowhere. Lauren? A rumor said she'd surfaced in Atlanta, shacked up with some lowlife, her shine long gone. I didn't care, didn't need to. She'd been my world once, her hazel eyes my anchor, but that world had burned, and I'd built a better one. The old house was someone else's now, the duffel bag a memory I'd kicked to the curb, and when I thought of her, rare, fleeting, it was like a faded photo, no sting left. That night, I walked to the Carver Community Center, the sign glowing soft in the dark, my boots steady on the gravel. Inside, a mural stretched across the lobby, me, wrench in hand, faces of the town around me, painted by those kids who'd given me that cape drawing. I stood there, coffee cold in my grip, tracing the lines. Jenny's smile, Mike's glare, a kid with a backpack, and felt it. Roots, deep and real, sunk into this place I'd fought for. I wasn't the foster kid, drifting anymore, the outsider scraping by. I was Ethan Carver, home at last, not because they'd given it to me, but because I'd claimed it. Back on the porch, I poured the last of the whiskey, the glass cold against my lips, and raised it to the sky. Not a toast to the past, but to this, the quiet, the strength, the future I'd forged. The Tates had thrown me a party to bury me, but I'd turned it into their grave. Now Magnolia Grove thrived, shops open, voices loud, kids dreaming, and Break the Chains rolled on, a wave I'd started but couldn't stop. I set the glass down, the stars bright above, and let out a breath I hadn't known I'd held. This was my ending, my beginning, and no one, not Lauren, not the Tates, not the world, could take it away.